The dust storm on Ashrock made it hard to see more than 10 meters ahead. Corporal Taman checked his rifle one more time as the transport ship dropped lower toward the barren moon's surface. Around him, 5 other soldiers sat in silence, their faces hidden behind helmets. The ship's engines screamed as it fought against the violent winds. Captain Jiwan stood near the ramp holding onto a metal bar. She was their squad leader, a woman who had survived 12 missions on this hellish rock. Her voice came through the helmet speakers, calm and steady. Listen up. Intelligence says the Valther shield generator has only 20 guards. We go in, plant the charges, and get out. 30 minutes maximum. The moment that shield drops, our artillery will flatten their base. Private Dong-hyun shifted nervously in his seat. This was only his 3rd combat mission. Lieutenant Hae-won, the intelligence officer, pulled up a holographic map that floated in the air between them. The Valther base glowed red on the display. The generator is in the center building, Hae-won explained. Their patrols change every 2 hours. We hit them right in the middle of the shift change when they're distracted. Taman studied the map carefully. Something felt wrong. The base looked too exposed, too easy to reach. He had been an engineer before joining the military, and his mind naturally looked for problems in any design. This mission felt like a trap. Captain, Taman said, what if the intel is wrong? Ji-won looked at him through her helmet's visor. Then we adapt. That's what we do. The ship touched down 2 kilometers from the target. The rear ramp dropped open and the squad rushed out into the storm. The wind immediately tried to knock them over. Ashrock's atmosphere was thin and filled with poisonous dust. Without their suits, they would die in seconds. They moved in formation across the rocky wasteland. The ground was covered with sharp volcanic rock that crunched under their boots. In the distance, the Valther base rose like a dark fortress against the orange sky. Strange alien towers glowed with purple energy. Taman carried extra demolition equipment on his back. As the squad's engineer, his job was to place the charges correctly. One mistake and the generator would survive. Then the mission would fail, and good soldiers would die for nothing. They reached the perimeter fence 30 minutes later. Taman pulled out his cutting tools and began working on the metal barrier. The fence was made of some alien alloy, but his Earth-made plasma cutter sliced through it easily. Humans might not have the Valther's advanced technology, but they knew how to break things. We're in, Ji-won whispered over the comm. Stay sharp. The squad slipped through the gap and entered the base. Taman's sensors showed heat signatures ahead. Guards were patrolling, but they seemed relaxed. Maybe the intelligence was right after all. Maybe this would be easy. They moved between buildings, staying in the shadows. The generator building stood in the center of the compound, exactly where the map showed it. Everything was going according to plan. That made Taman even more nervous. Dong-hyun reached the generator building's door first. He placed his hand on the access panel and Hae-won remotely hacked into their systems. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Too easy, Taman muttered. Shut up and move, Ji-won ordered. They rushed inside. The generator room was massive, filled with towers of humming alien machinery. Taman immediately began placing charges at the structural weak points. His hands moved fast and precise. He had done this 100 times in training. That was when the alarms started screaming. Red lights flooded the room. The doors slammed shut behind them. Through the walls, Taman heard the heavy footsteps of many soldiers running toward their position. It's a trap, Hae-won shouted. They knew we were coming. Ji-won's voice cut through the panic. Defensive positions, now. The squad scattered, taking cover behind the machinery. Taman finished placing the last charge and activated the timer. 15 minutes. They had 15 minutes to get out before this whole building exploded. The doors burst open. Valther soldiers poured into the room. They were tall creatures nearly 3 meters high, with 4 arms and skin like armor plating. Their weapons fired bolts of superheated plasma that melted metal on contact. The squad returned fire. Human bullets ripped through the first wave of enemies, but more kept coming. Dozens of them. The intelligence had said 20 guards. There were at least 50 already, and more arriving every second. We're surrounded, Dong-hyun screamed. Taman's mind raced. They couldn't fight this many. The mission was blown. The only option was retreat. But the charges were set. If they left now, at least the generator would be destroyed. Ji-won seemed to reach the same conclusion. Fall back to the east exit. Move, move, move. The squad fought their way toward a side door. Hae-won took a plasma bolt to the shoulder and went down. Taman grabbed her and hauled her forward. They burst through the door into a corridor filled with more Valther soldiers. "There's too many," someone shouted. They were being herded, pushed toward the main entrance. Taman realized the Valther weren't trying to kill them quickly. They were driving the squad into a kill zone outside. The main doors opened ahead. Through them, Taman could see the open ground. Beyond that, their escape route. But between here and safety were at least 40 more Valther soldiers, weapons ready, forming a perfect ambush line. Jiwan stopped. Her helmet turned, scanning their situation. Taman saw her shoulders tense. She was making a calculation that every soldier dreaded. "Captain," Donghyun's voice shook. "We need time," Jiwan said quietly. "Someone has to hold them here while the rest get through." Silence fell over the squad. They all knew what that meant. Whoever stayed would die. Taman stepped forward before anyone else could speak. "I'll do it." "Taman, no." Haewon started. "I'm the engineer," he interrupted. "I can rig the corridor to collapse. Give you maybe 3 minutes. That's enough time to reach the transport." Jiwon's hand gripped his shoulder. Through the helmet he couldn't see her face, but he heard the pain in her voice. "Are you sure?" "Someone has to," Taman said. "Make it count, Captain." There was no time for arguments or goodbyes. Jiwon nodded once, then gestured to the squad. "Go now!" They ran through the doors into the hell outside. Plasma bolts filled the air around them. Taman turned back to face the corridor. Behind him, he heard his squad fighting their way across the open ground. Every second he bought them mattered. He pulled out his remaining explosives and began placing them on the corridor supports. The Valther soldiers were coming, their footsteps shaking the floor. Taman worked faster than he had ever worked in his life. The first enemy appeared around the corner. Taman fired his rifle, dropping the creature. 2 more appeared. He fired again. His ammunition counter dropped rapidly. The charges were set. Taman triggered them and ran. The explosion behind him was deafening. The corridor ceiling collapsed, crushing a dozen Valther soldiers and blocking the path. But it wouldn't hold for long. He burst through the main doors. Across the open ground, he saw the transport ship lifting off. His squad had made it. Relief flooded through him. Then plasma bolts hit him from 3 directions at once. Taemin's suit absorbed the first 2 shots, but the third burned through his side. He fell hard onto the rocky ground. Pain exploded through his body. His vision blurred. More shots hit him. His suit was failing. Through the haze, he saw Valther soldiers closing in from all sides, at least 30 of them. He tried to raise his rifle, but his arms wouldn't respond. The last thing he heard before darkness took him was Jiwan's voice over the comm, distant and broken with static. "I'm sorry, Taemin. I'm so sorry." Then there was nothing but silence and the endless dark. Pain brought Taemin back to consciousness. Every part of his body screamed in agony. His suit's emergency medical system had pumped him full of painkillers and sealed the worst wounds, but he was still dying. Slowly, he opened his eyes. Darkness surrounded him. For a moment, panic set in. Was he blind? Then he saw the faint glow of his helmet display. The light was so dim he could barely read it. His suit's power was almost gone. Taemin tried to move. His left arm responded weakly. His right arm felt numb. His legs, he could feel them, which meant his spine was intact. That was something. He touched his side where the plasma bolt had hit. The suit's emergency foam had hardened over the wound, but he could feel blood still leaking. Where was he? His memory was fragmented. The mission, the trap. Holding the corridor while his squad escaped. Getting shot, falling. Then nothing. He must have been unconscious for hours. Maybe longer. His helmet clock was broken, showing random numbers. The Valther soldiers must have assumed he was dead and left him in the wasteland. A reasonable assumption. He probably should be dead. Taemin forced himself to sit up. The movement made him dizzy and he almost passed out again. He took slow breaths, waiting for the world to stop spinning. When his vision cleared, he looked around. He was lying in a crater surrounded by rocks. The orange sky of ash rock glowed above him. A dust storm was passing overhead, blocking out the distant stars. He had somehow crawled or been blown into this depression. It had probably saved his life by hiding him from the Valther patrols. His suit's water supply was intact. 3 liters. Maybe enough for 2 days if he was careful. Food? 2 emergency ration bars. His weapons were gone except for a combat knife strapped to his leg. The Valther must have taken his rifle and grenades. Taemin checked his comm system. Dead. The plasma bolt had fried most of his suit's electronics. He was completely alone, wounded, stranded in enemy territory with almost no supplies. The human base was 40 kilometers away across open wasteland. He would never make it. The logical part of his mind told him to give up. Find a comfortable spot and wait for death. It would be easier than struggling. But another part of him, a deeper part, refused to accept that ending. Tai Min thought about his sister Yunji. She was only 16, living in a refugee settlement on New Busan colony. Their parents were dead, killed 3 years ago when the Valther attacked their homeworld. Yunji was all he had left. He had promised her he would come back. He forced himself to stand. His legs shook, but they held. Good enough. Taemin began walking, not toward the human base. That would take days he didn't have. Instead, he headed toward a dark opening in the rocks nearby. Caves, the old mining tunnels that covered Ashrock's surface. If he could reach them, he might find shelter. Maybe water from ice deposits. Maybe a way to survive another day. Each step was torture. His side burned with every movement. The hardened foam in his wound cracked with each motion, letting fresh blood seep out. But he kept moving. The cave entrance was closer than it looked. Or maybe he was just delirious. Time felt strange. One moment he was 10 meters away. The next he was stumbling into darkness. The tunnel was old, carved by human miners before the war. Support beams made of earth steel lined the walls. Taemin collapsed against a wall and rested. His suit's failing sensors detected something. A faint signal. Electronic noise. He turned his head, trying to locate the source. There, deeper in the tunnel, a junction box on the wall, still powered by some ancient battery system. It was a communication relay, probably forgotten when the mines were abandoned. With trembling hands, Taemin opened the box. The electronics inside were primitive but functional. Could he use this to contact the human base? No, his suit's transmitter was destroyed. But maybe? He pulled wires from the box and connected them to his helmet's audio system. After several attempts, he heard something. Voices, not human voices. Valther communications. The junction box was accidentally picking up enemy transmissions. Taemin listened carefully. The Valther language was harsh and guttural, but Earth intelligence had taught all soldiers basic understanding. He caught fragments of conversation. Unit positions. Guard rotations. Supply schedules. Then he heard something that made his blood freeze. Final preparations for the New Busan. Operation. Commander Velthar confirms attack in 96 hours. 3 million human civilians will be eliminated. New Busan, his sister's home. They were planning a massive attack. 96 hours. 4 days. Taemin's hand shook as he adjusted the receiver, trying to hear more. The conversation continued. They were discussing fleet movements, troop deployments, weapons that would burn New Busan cities to ash. The Valther thought the attack would end human resistance in this sector. And Earth Command didn't know. The attack would come as a complete surprise. His mind raced. He had to warn them, but how? His comm was dead. The human base was 40 kilometers away across enemy-controlled territory. He would never make it in his condition. Taemin spent the next hour listening to every transmission he could find. He learned that Commander Velthar himself was on Ashrock, personally coordinating the attack from a forward observation post. The commander visited the post every 2 days to check preparations. An idea formed in Taemin's damaged mind. A crazy, impossible idea. What if he didn't try to reach the human base? What if he went after the commander instead? If he could capture Velthar, the Valther would have to negotiate. They would delay the attack. And if Taemin could bring the commander to human lines, Earth intelligence could extract the full battle plans. It was insane. He was one wounded soldier with no weapons except a knife. Velthar would be surrounded by elite guards. The observation post would be a fortress, but it was a chance. Maybe the only chance to save his sister and 3 million others. Taemin looked at his remaining supplies. 2 liters of water left. 2 food bars. Maybe 30 hours of life support in his damaged suit. Not enough to reach the human base, but enough to try something impossible. He thought about his old job before the war. He had been an engineer at a mining company, designing safety systems and equipment. He understood how things worked. How to build, how to break, how to jury-rig solutions from scraps. The mining tunnels around him were full of old equipment, abandoned tools, broken machines. Maybe he could use them. Taemin stood up and began exploring the tunnel system. His body protested every movement, but he pushed through the pain. He found a storage room filled with mining gear, plasma cutters with drained batteries, electromagnetic pulse devices used for scanning, grappling cables, power cells. He spent hours working, taking apart equipment and rebuilding it into weapons. His engineering knowledge guided his hands. The EMP scanner became a weapon that could disable Valther shields. The plasma cutter, with a fresh power cell from his suit, became a close-range blade. The grappling cables would work for binding prisoners. It wasn't much, but it might be enough. Taemin found a puddle of melted ice in a deeper tunnel and refilled his water supply. He ate one food bar slowly, making it last. His wound had stopped bleeding, though it hurt worse than ever. The suit's medical system warned him about infection, but there was nothing he could do about that now. He pulled up the Valther transmissions again and listened carefully. The observation post was 15 kilometers northwest. Commander Velthar would arrive there in 36 hours for his regular inspection. Taemin had 36 hours to get there, scout the location, and plan an attack. 36 hours to do something that an entire assault team would struggle to accomplish. He thought about Captain Jiwan and the squad. They had escaped because he stayed behind. He had bought them time with his life. Or so they thought. The idea of them believing he was dead bothered him less than he expected. What mattered was the mission. What mattered was stopping the attack on New Busan. Taemin gathered his improvised weapons and headed back to the tunnel entrance. The dust storm had passed. The landscape was eerily quiet under the orange sky. In the distance, he could see the glow of Valther installations. He began walking northwest. Each step was agony, but he had learned to accept pain as a constant companion. His sister's face appeared in his mind, keeping him moving forward. Somewhere out there, Commander Velthar was planning the death of millions. He thought humans were weak. He thought one wounded soldier couldn't possibly threaten him. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The observation post sat on a ridge overlooking the Valther-controlled territory. Taemin watched it through his helmet's damaged scope from a position 200 meters away. He had been lying in the same spot for 6 hours, barely moving, studying every detail. The journey here had taken 2 days. 2 days of crawling through tunnels, hiding from patrols, and fighting to stay conscious. His wound was infected now. He could feel the fever burning through his body. The suit's medical system kept beeping warnings that he dismissed. The observation post was exactly what he expected. A fortified bunker built into the rock, surrounded by sensor arrays and automated turrets. At least 12 guards visible on the perimeter, probably more inside. And somewhere in that building was Commander Velthar. Taemin had listened to enough transmissions to learn the commander's schedule. Velthar would arrive in 3 hours for his inspection. He would stay for approximately 2 hours, reviewing attack preparations with his officers. Then he would return to the main base. That was the window. 2 hours to infiltrate, capture the commander, and escape, against 12 or more elite guards. While wounded and half dead from infection, the logical part of Taemin's mind kept telling him this was suicide. But that voice had grown quieter over the past 2 days. Now there was only focus, only the mission. He studied the defenses carefully. The sensor arrays were the main problem. They would detect any approach within 50 meters. But Taemin had noticed something during his observation. Every 2 hours there was a maintenance cycle. The sensors powered down for exactly 90 seconds while the system reset. The Valther probably thought 90 seconds wasn't enough time for anyone to cross 50 meters of open ground. They were wrong. Taemin had also noticed the thermal and electromagnetic sensors were positioned to detect large heat sources and active equipment, but Ashrock's surface was covered with volcanic vents that constantly released hot gas. The sensors had to filter out this background noise, or they would be triggering false alarms constantly. That was his way in. He waited until the next maintenance cycle began, then moved. Not toward the post, but toward a nearby volcanic vent. The gas it released was hot enough to match his suit's thermal signature. He positioned himself directly behind the vent, letting its heat mask his presence. The sensors came back online. Taemin held his breath, waiting for alarms. Nothing. The sensors couldn't distinguish him from the vent's output. He began moving slowly, staying in the thermal shadow of the volcanic activity, creeping closer to the post. It took him an hour to cover 50 meters. An hour of inch-by-inch movement. timing each motion to match the fluctuations in the volcanic gas. His wound screamed with every tiny shift. Sweat poured down his face inside the helmet. When he finally reached the outer wall, he was shaking from exhaustion, but he was inside the sensor perimeter. Stage 1 complete. Now came the hard part. Taemin pulled out the modified EMP device he had built from mining equipment. It was crude but powerful. One pulse would disable shields and electronics in a 10-meter radius. But it would also announce his presence to every guard in the facility. He would only get one chance. Taemin waited in the shadow of the wall as the sun set. The orange sky turned dark red, then purple. Ashrock had no moon, so night was almost completely black. Good. Darkness was a weapon. He heard the sound of approaching aircraft. Through a crack in the wall, he saw a Valthar transport descending toward the landing pad. Commander Velthar had arrived. The commander emerged from the transport flanked by 4 personal guards. He was tall even for a Valthar, with deep purple markings on his armored skin that indicated high rank. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Taemin watched as Velthar entered the main bunker. The guards took positions outside. Taemin counted them again. 14 visible guards now, plus the 4 personal bodyguards inside with the commander. 18 total. He checked his weapons. The modified plasma cutter was fully charged. The EMP device was ready. The grappling cable was coiled and ready. His combat knife was sharp. Against 18 elite soldiers, he had surprise. That would have to be enough. Taemin moved along the outer wall toward the service entrance. This door was less guarded because it led to the facility's power systems. Only 2 guards stood nearby, and they were focused outward, watching for external threats. They didn't expect someone to already be inside the perimeter. Taemin activated the EMP device and threw it. The device landed between the 2 guards and detonated with a sharp electromagnetic pulse. Both guards' shields flickered and died. Their weapons sparked and went dead. Before they could react, Taemin was on them. The plasma cutter in his hand burned through the first guard's armor. The second guard lunged at him, but Taemin dropped low and drove his combat knife up through the alien's weak point at the throat. Both guards fell. The entire fight took 4 seconds. Alarms started screaming. Lights flooded the compound. Taemin had known this would happen. Stealth was impossible now. Speed was everything. He ripped open the service door and plunged into the facility. The corridor was narrow and poorly lit. Emergency lights flashed red. He could hear guards running, their heavy footsteps echoing through the building. Taemin ran toward the command center. He had memorized the layout from studying the building's external structure. Command centers were always in the most protected location, deep inside, surrounded by multiple layers of defense. 3 guards appeared ahead. Taemin didn't slow down. He threw his last EMP device. It exploded and their shields died. He crashed into them at full speed using momentum and surprise. His knife found vulnerable spots. The plasma cutter burned through armor. He was past them before they hit the ground, more guards ahead. 6 of them forming a defensive line. Too many to fight directly. Taemin pulled a power cell from his belt and threw it. The cell hit the wall above them and exploded, showering them with sparks and debris. In the confusion, he dove through a side corridor. His suit's power was almost gone. The medical system had stopped working completely. He was running on pure adrenaline now, his body pushing beyond its limits. The command center door was ahead, sealed and guarded by the 4 personal bodyguards. These weren't regular soldiers. They were elite warriors, trained specifically to protect high-ranking commanders. Taemin didn't have the strength to fight all 4. But he didn't need to fight them. He needed to get through them. He yanked open a maintenance panel on the wall and pulled out a bundle of power cables. Ashrock's harsh environment meant facilities used heavy-duty systems. These cables carried enough current to power mining equipment. Taemin cut the cables with his knife. Electricity arced and sparked. He threw the live cables at the guards. The cables wrapped around the first guard. Electricity surged through the alien's body, dropping him instantly. The other guards jumped back, but Taemin was already moving. He dove between them, taking a glancing blow from one guard's weapon that dented his helmet. He hit the command center door and triggered his plasma cutter. The blade burned through the lock mechanism. The door slid open. Inside, Commander Velthar stood at a holographic display, his face showing shock. No one had ever penetrated his personal security before. It was impossible. Yet here was a human soldier covered in blood and barely alive, standing in his command center. "You," Velthar said in broken human language. "You are dead. We killed you." Taemin raised his plasma cutter. "Humans don't die easy." Velthar's hand moved toward a weapon on his belt. Taemin fired the EMP device at point-blank range. The commander's personal shield flickered and died. His weapon sparked and went dead. The 3 surviving bodyguards burst through the door behind Taemin. He spun and threw his combat knife. It caught one guard in the eye, dropping him. The other 2 charged. Taemin grabbed Velthar and pulled the commander in front of him as a shield. The guards froze. They couldn't risk hitting their commander. "Tell them to back off," Taemin said, pressing the plasma cutter against Velthar's neck. "Or you die right now." Velthar spoke rapidly in his own language. The guards lowered their weapons but didn't retreat. Taemin's vision was starting to blur. He had maybe minutes before his body gave out completely. He pulled out the grappling cable and began binding Velthar's forearms behind his back. The commander was heavy and strong, but Taemin had surprise and desperation on his side. "You cannot escape," Velthar said. "There are dozens of soldiers outside. You will die here." "Maybe," Taemin said, finishing the bindings. "But you're coming with me." He dragged the commander toward the door. The bodyguards moved to block his path. "Your commander dies if you stop me," Taemin said clearly. "Move." The guards hesitated. In that moment of indecision, Taemin made his move. He triggered the facility's emergency evacuation alarm with a shot from his plasma cutter into the control panel. Sirens wailed. Blast doors began slamming shut throughout the building. In the confusion, Taemin hauled Velthar through the door and into the corridor. Guards were running everywhere, trying to respond to multiple emergencies. Taemin shot out lights as he moved, creating darkness and chaos. He found a maintenance shaft and shoved Velthar into it. The shaft led to... The first 10 kilometers were the hardest. Taemin pulled Commander Velthar behind him, the grappling cable cutting into his damaged suit's gloves. Every step felt like walking through fire. The infection in his side had spread through his whole body now. He could feel his organs shutting down one by one, but he kept walking. Behind them, the Valthyr observation post lit up the night sky with searchlights. Taemin heard aircraft taking off, spreading out to search for their missing commander. They would find him eventually. The only question was whether he could reach human lines first. Velthar spoke from behind him, his voice calm and measured. "This is pointless, human. You should let me go. I will ensure your death is quick and painless." Taemin didn't waste breath responding. He focused on putting one foot in front of the other. "I can give you wealth," Velthar continued. "A ship of your own. Safe passage to any world you choose. Your species values such things, yes?" Still no response. Taemin's helmet display was almost completely dark now. Only one system still functioned. The basic compass that pointed toward the human base. Northeast. 30 kilometers remaining. "You are dying," Velthar observed. "I can smell the infection in your wounds. Your body is failing. Why not end this suffering?" Taemin stumbled and fell. He lay on the rocky ground for a moment, tasting blood in his mouth. His body was begging him to stop, to rest, to give up. Instead, he forced himself to stand. He grabbed the cable and kept walking. They walked through the night. Taemin lost track of time. Sometimes he was walking. Sometimes he realized he had been crawling and didn't remember when that changed. Velthar's voice kept talking, offering deals, making threats, trying to break his will. Taemin stopped listening. In his mind, he saw his sister Yunji. She was smiling, like she did in the last video message she sent him. She talked about her school, her friends, her dreams of becoming a doctor. Simple things. Normal things. The kind of life he was fighting to protect. Dawn came. The orange sun rose over Ashrock's horizon, bringing killing heat with it. Taemin's suit temperature regulation had failed hours ago. He was cooking inside the armor, but taking it off would mean death from the poisonous atmosphere. He checked his compass. 25 kilometers to go. That was when he heard the aircraft. 3 Valthyr search ships appeared on the horizon, flying low and slow. They were using ground-penetrating sensors to search for heat signatures. Taemin had maybe 2 minutes before they reached his position. He looked around desperately. The terrain here was flat and exposed. No caves, no cover. Just open rock field, the volcanic vents. They were his only chance. Taemin dragged Velthar toward the nearest vent, a smoking hole in the ground releasing superheated gas. He positioned them directly downwind of the vent, letting the hot gas flow over them. Their thermal signatures would blend with the vent's heat. The aircraft passed overhead. Taemin held his breath, watching through his helmet's cracked visor. The ship slowed, sensors scanning. One of them hovered almost directly above their position. Then it moved on. The gas cloud from the vent had hidden them perfectly. Velthar laughed, a harsh sound. Clever, using our own sensor limitations against us. But you only delay the inevitable. There are hundreds of soldiers searching for us. Taemin waited until the aircraft were distant specks, then resumed walking. Northeast. Always northeast. The sun climbed higher. The temperature soared. Taemin's legs stopped responding properly. He fell more often now. Each time it took longer to get up. At the 15-kilometer mark, he collapsed completely. His body simply refused to move anymore. He lay on his back, staring up at the orange sky, breathing in short gasps. This was it. This was where he would die. He heard Velthar moving beside him. The commander had managed to sit up despite his bound arms. "It is over," Velthar said. "You fought well. For a human, but your body has reached its limit." Taemin's vision was fading. Dark spots filled his sight. He tried to move his arms but couldn't feel them anymore. Then he saw them. His family. His parents stood in front of him, smiling. They looked exactly as he remembered from before the war. His mother reached out her hand. "Come with us," she said softly. "You're tired." "Rest now, I can't," Taemin whispered. "Unji." "I have to protect Unji." His father shook his head. "You've done enough. You've fought enough. Come home, it would be so easy. Just close his eyes and let go. End the pain. End the struggle." But then he saw his sister's face among his parents. Unji looked scared, alone. She was calling for him, asking where he was, why he hadn't come back like he promised. No, he had made a promise. He wasn't done yet. Taemin's hand moved, just slightly. Then his arm. He rolled onto his side, then his stomach. His parents' images faded away. They weren't real. Just hallucinations from fever and blood loss. But the promise was real. Unji was real. 3 million people on New Busan were real. He grabbed the cable connected to Velthar and began crawling. Not walking anymore. That was beyond him now. But he could crawl. Inch by inch. Meter by meter. Velthar watched in what might have been respect or horror. "This is madness. You should be dead. Why do you persist?" Taemin finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Because I'm human. We don't quit." He crawled through the afternoon. The sun beat down mercilessly. His suit's water supply had run dry hours ago. His throat was so dry he couldn't swallow. But still he crawled. 5 kilometers from human lines, a Valther patrol found them. Taemin heard the vehicles approaching and looked up. 4 heavy transports crested a ridge heading straight toward them. At least 30 soldiers. This time there was no escape. No clever trick. He was too weak to fight, too slow to run. He pulled Velthar in front of him and pressed his plasma cutter against the commander's neck. It was the only leverage he had left. The vehicles stopped 20 meters away. Soldiers poured out, weapons ready. A Valther officer stepped forward, his armor indicating high rank. "Release Commander Velthar," the officer demanded in human language. "You are surrounded. Resistance is pointless." Taemin's hand shook as he held the cutter. "Come any closer and he dies." "Then you die immediately after," the officer replied. "What do you gain?" "Your attack on New Busan gets delayed," Taemin said. "Your forces lose coordination without their commander." "That's enough," the officer hesitated. He was calculating odds, trying to determine if this half-dead human really had the strength to kill Velthar before they shot him. Taemin made the calculation easier. He pressed the cutter hard enough that it singed Velthar's skin. The commander hissed in pain. "I have nothing left to lose," Taemin said. "But your commander has everything to lose. Back away." The Valther soldiers looked at their officer, waiting for orders. The officer looked at Velthar, who nodded slightly. "Fall back," the officer ordered reluctantly. 20 meters. "Hold position." The soldiers withdrew, but they didn't leave. They formed a perimeter, weapons trained on Taemin, waiting for him to weaken. Waiting for a mistake, Taemin resumed crawling. The soldiers matched his pace, maintaining their distance. It became a strange procession across the wasteland, one dying human, dragging the Valther's highest commander. surrounded by an entire patrol that couldn't intervene without risking their leader's death. 3 kilometers. 2 kilometers. 1 kilometer. Taemin's vision was almost gone now. He was navigating by memory and instinct. The compass said northeast. That was all he knew. Then he saw it. Through the haze and darkness closing in around his vision, he saw the walls of the human forward base. Towers. Guns. Soldiers in earth armor. Almost there. He whispered to himself. Almost. The Valther officer behind him shouted something. The soldiers were spreading out, preparing for something. Taemin realized they would attack the moment he reached the human lines. They would risk Velthar's death rather than let him be captured. 500 meters to the base. Human soldiers on the walls had spotted him. He saw them pointing, raising weapons, confusion evident in their movements. They didn't know what they were seeing. 200 meters. The Valther soldiers were taking positions for an assault. 100 meters. Taemin's arms gave out. He collapsed face first onto the rocks. The cable to Velthar slipped from his grip. This was it. He had come so far, but 100 meters might as well be 100 kilometers. Then he heard the voice over external speakers. Captain G1's voice. Cover fire. All units, cover fire. Get him inside. The base erupted with weapons fire. Human soldiers poured out of the gates, laying down suppression fire at the Valther patrol. A medic team rushed toward Taemin's position. He felt hands grab him, lifting him, carrying him. He tried to tell them about Velthar, about the commander, but no words came out. Got him, someone shouted. And there's a Valther prisoner with him. It's their commander. He's got their commander. Taemin felt himself being pulled through the gates. Behind him, he heard the Valther soldiers retreating under human fire. They wouldn't risk a full assault on the base. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Ji-won's face looking down at him, tears streaming from her eyes. You made it, she whispered. You impossible bastard. You actually made it. Then there was nothing but peaceful darkness. Taemin woke up in stages. First came awareness of light beyond his eyelids. Then sounds, the steady beep of medical equipment, voices speaking in low tones. Finally, sensation returned. He was lying on something soft, a bed. The air smelled clean and sterile. He opened his eyes slowly. White ceiling, medical monitors, a private room. He tried to move his head and found he could, though it hurt. Easy, a voice said. A nurse appeared in his vision, human, wearing Earth medical uniform. You've been in a medically induced coma for 2 weeks. Your body needed time to heal. 2 weeks. The attack on New Busan. Had it happened? Was he too late? Taemin tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. The nurse held water to his lips. He drank slowly, the cool liquid the most wonderful thing he had ever tasted. New Busan, he managed to croak. The attack, the nurse smiled. Stopped. Thanks to the intelligence you provided. The Valther never launched their assault. Relief flooded through him so powerfully that tears came to his eyes. He had made it. Yoonji was safe. The door opened and Captain Ji-won entered, followed by Lieutenant Hae-won. Both looked tired but relieved. Ji-won pulled up a chair beside his bed. You're awake, she said simply. Good, we were starting to worry. The commander, Taemin said. Velthar. Did he talk? Oh, he talked, Hae-won said with a grim smile. After Earth intelligence finished interrogating him, we knew everything about their battle plans. Fleet positions, supply lines, command structure. The Valther had to cancel not just the New Busan operation, but 3 other major offensives. You single-handedly disrupted their entire war strategy for this sector. Ji-won leaned forward. Taemin, you should have died at least 6 times during your journey. The doctors say your survival was medically impossible. Severe blood loss, systemic infection, organ failure, radiation poisoning. You were technically dead when we pulled you through the gates. Your heart had stopped. But I made it, Taemin said. You made it, Ji-won agreed. She looked down at her hands. I'm sorry for leaving you behind. I made a calculation and you made the right call, Taemin interrupted. The squad survived. The mission succeeded. That's what mattered. Still, Ji-won said quietly, I should have found another way. The door burst open. A teenage girl rushed in, pushing past the nurse's protests. She had tears streaming down her face. Taemin, Yoonji cried. She ran to his bedside and grabbed his hand. They told me you were dead. The military said you were dead. Taemin squeezed her hand weakly. I'm hard to kill. His sister laughed and cried at the same time. When they came to tell me you were alive, that you saved everyone on New Busan, I didn't believe them. I thought it was a mistake. Not a mistake, Taemin said. I promised I'd come back, didn't I? They talked for a while, Yoonji telling him about everything that had happened during the 2 weeks he was unconscious. The military had evacuated New Busan briefly when they learned of the planned attack, but returned when Earth forces intercepted and destroyed the Valther fleet. His sister had been terrified, not knowing if he was alive or dead. Eventually, the nurse insisted Yoonji let him rest. His sister left reluctantly, promising to return the next day. Jiwon remained behind. There's more you should know, she said. The story of what you did has spread. Across Earth forces, across the colonies. You're famous. The soldier who walked through hell carrying the enemy commander. I crawled most of it, Taemin corrected. That's not the point, Jiwon said with a slight smile. The point is what it means. For months, human forces have been losing ground. Morale was low. People were starting to think we couldn't win against the Valther. Then you did the impossible. One wounded soldier, abandoned in enemy territory, captured their highest commander and disrupted their entire offensive strategy. It changed everything. Haewon nodded. The propaganda value alone has been incredible. But it's more than that. The Valther are terrified now. They thought they understood human limitations. You proved them wrong. I just did what needed to be done, Taemin said. That's what makes it powerful, Jiwon replied. You weren't special forces. You weren't enhanced or equipped with advanced weapons. You were just a regular soldier who refused to quit. It showed everyone, human and Valther alike, what we're capable of when pushed to the edge. Over the following days, Taemin's strength gradually returned. Physical therapy was painful, but nothing compared to what he had already endured. Visitors came and went. Private Dong-hyun visited, looking at Taemin with something like awe. Other members of the squad came to see him. Each one thanked him for buying them time to escape. On the 5th day, a military official arrived with an ornate box. Inside was a medal, the highest honor Earth forces could award. Corporal Taemin, the official said formally, for extraordinary valor in combat, for actions beyond the call of duty, and for saving millions of civilian lives, Earth Defense Command awards you the Star of Valor. You are also promoted to the rank of sergeant. Taemin looked at the medal. It was beautiful, but it felt heavy in his hands, not physically, emotionally. I appreciate the recognition, he said slowly, but I don't want the promotion. I want to stay with my squad. As a corporal, the official looked surprised. That's unusual. Most soldiers would accept the promotion gratefully. I'm not most soldiers, Taemin said. I'm a combat engineer. That's what I'm good at. That's where I belong, the official left looking confused. Jiwon, who had been watching from the doorway, approached after he departed. You really turned down a promotion? She asked. Yes, why? Taemin thought about it. Because I didn't do what I did for recognition. I did it because those 3 million people needed someone to act. The squad needed someone to buy them time. It wasn't about being a hero. It was about doing the job. Jiwon studied him for a long moment. The job nearly killed you. But it didn't, Taemin pointed out. I'm still here. News arrived on the 10th day that shocked everyone. The Valther Empire had requested formal peace negotiations for the first time since the war began. They wanted to discuss terms for a ceasefire. Earth Command was cautiously optimistic. The negotiations would take months, maybe years. But it was a start. A chance for the war to end without total destruction on either side. Haewon brought the news to Taemin personally. They're negotiating because of you, she said. Because you showed them that humans won't give up. That even when defeated, even when left for dead, we keep fighting. It made them reconsider whether this war can actually be won. One soldier couldn't have changed everything, Taemin protested. One soldier did, Haewon corrected. Actions matter more than numbers sometimes. You proved that. On the 14th day, Taemin was finally cleared to leave medical care. He could walk without assistance now, though he still tired easily. The wound in his side had healed to an angry red scar that would probably be with him forever. Jiwon met him at the medical facility's exit. So, Corporal, what now? Now I go back to work, Taemin said simply. The squad still needs an engineer. Just like that? After everything? Just like that. They walked together toward the barracks. Along the way, other soldiers stopped and saluted. Some wanted to shake his hand. Some just stared in amazement. Taemin found it uncomfortable but endured it politely. At the barracks, the rest of the squad was waiting. Donghyun had tears in his eyes. The others looked relieved and happy. They welcomed him back like family. That evening, Taemin stood on the barracks observation deck, looking out over the ash rock wasteland. Somewhere out there was the path he had crawled, bleeding and dying, refusing to give up. It felt like a lifetime ago. Jiwon joined him at the railing. "You know," she said, "they're going to write stories about what you did, books, maybe movies. You're going to be remembered for centuries." "I don't need to be remembered," Taemin said. "I just needed my sister to be safe. She is safe. 3 million people are safe. Because of you." Taemin was quiet for a moment. "You know what the strangest part was? When I was out there, dying in the wasteland, I kept thinking about something my father used to say. He was a miner, worked the deep tunnels. He always said, 'The rock doesn't care if you're tired. It doesn't care if you want to quit. You either dig or you're buried.' I guess I just kept digging." "That's the human spirit in one sentence," Jiwon said with a slight smile. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the orange sun set over the alien landscape. Tomorrow, Taemin would return to duty. There would be more missions, more danger. The war might be ending, but it wasn't over yet. But for tonight, he was alive. His sister was alive. The people he fought to protect were alive. That was enough. Private Dong-hyun appeared behind them. "Sergeant wants everyone in the briefing room. New mission assignment." Taemin nodded and turned to follow. Jiwon caught his arm. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I'm glad you made it back. The squad wouldn't be the same without you." "I made a promise to make it count," Taemin replied. "Had to keep that promise." They walked back inside together, ready for whatever came next. Far across the galaxy, in the Valther capital, military leaders gathered to discuss the human problem. They reviewed footage from Ash Rock, watched recordings of one wounded soldier doing the impossible. They debated strategies and tactics,